And welcome back to the Fairy Tale family, where our goal is to put a little bit of magic into your everyday. I'm Chelsea, and today we are introducing a new series here on our YouTube channel. Now, Mark and I have actually been doing this, what we're going to talk about today, for at least 5 years. So we are calling this series Magical Menus, because we are going to be showing you how to make copycat recipes from one Disney park or Disney resort somewhere in the world. So our goal is to have at least one of these a month. They are a longer process of editing. Thank you, Mr. Mark, for doing that for us. But we started doing this so long ago. And we started getting excited and wanting to do something for our trip at home together. So one of the things that we do now is we craft with Callie pretty regularly, all related to Disney. And I'll put one of those videos up here for you as well. And we'll also put in the description box our freebie on 4 free crafts you can do Disney related seasonally throughout the year. Today, we're going to be taking you through Disneyland's Blue Bayou, which is a restaurant out in Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Their particular dish that we're showing you today is the chicken Florentine. Now, I have never ordered this at the Blue Bayou. I used to live in LA, and I had an annual pass to Disneyland, and whenever Mark would fly out and visit me, we would always go. And this was a restaurant that we went to a lot, primarily because Mark liked the gumbo. Also, it's dark, its atmosphere is amazing, and it's underneath an attraction in Disneyland. So when I was looking online through my Disney cookbooks, I figured that I would make something that maybe we've never had, but would still like get us in the spirit because it's a Disney recipe. So I found this recipe on Pinterest. If you want the entire recipe, because I did make some changes, please be sure that you're on our email list, and I'll link that below too. That's totally free. It's a weekly newsletter that goes out about Disney updates, parenting, things that I want to talk about. My weight loss updates go in there, but I'll have the entire recipe in the email newsletter. So I would qualify myself as I'm an okay, decent at-home chef. Do I know technical things? No, I do not. Like when I blanched the spinach in this recipe, I had to look up on Pinterest how to properly blanch spinach. So I'm not a chef savant, I'm not an expert, but I did make my way through this entire recipe and I thought it was pretty good. Mark also liked it and Callie tried it. Victory for a 4-year-old. So our plan is to find recipes because we are planning our Disneyland Aulani double trip for August. So we're going in August, and our plan is to find tropical recipes for Aulani and Disneyland-based staples and bring them to you as I'm cooking them. I did this once for a Disney website, like they paid me to do this. We made risotto balls out of one of our cookbooks. Let's see if I can find that. This was the cookbook. It's called Cooking with Mickey and the Disney Chefs, and it's well loved. Like we have cooked our whole way through this almost. So I made risotto balls from one of the recipes here, and it was so hard, and I burned every element of my wrist trying to get the risotto balls in the oil. This recipe, this chicken Florentine, so much easier. But we also have Kitchen Magic with Mickey, and our most recent Disney cookbook is the Disney Princess Cookbook, which Callie and I are cooking through. So maybe she'll be also featured in some of the like recipes where you can cook with your kids. So that's it. You're gonna cook alongside me here. We are going straight from like ingredients into what we're doing. You're gonna be right along with me. So if this is a recipe you might think you'd be interested in, keep on watching and I'll see you at the end.
So I'm going to start by showing you the ingredients for both the chicken breasts and the sauce. So we're starting with 7 ounces of chicken breast halves with skin preferably, which is about 4 breasts, 3 ounces of chopped fresh spinach, 3 ounces of grated or shredded cheddar cheese, 2 ounces cooked and chopped bacon. Obviously, this still needs to be cooked. We'll add salt and pepper in here as well, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. This is for the chicken breast alone. The Florentine sauce uses separate ingredients. So for the Florentine sauce, we're going to start with, we'll end up needing 5 teaspoons of unsalted butter, 2 teaspoons of flour, 3 whole, then sliced medium mushrooms. I chose white ones that had already been chopped. We'll need 1/4 cup of chicken broth, 2 chicken bouillon cubes in addition to give it a really rich chickeny flavor. Now I'm omitting also 2/3 cup of white wine because we don't have any, but we'll use a cup of heavy cream, as well as we'll need juice from around 1/4 cup of juice from a fresh lemon. This is parsley. I'll be using a teaspoon of this. And I couldn't find fresh chives, so I'm going to be using ones that you can refrigerate. I'll use a teaspoon of those as well. So those are all of the ingredients that you'll need to make this dish. So because I used fresh spinach, I had to blanch it, which means that I needed to boil water while I preheated my oven to 375 degrees. You can also see here that I am cooking up the bacon to be chopped to go inside the chicken breasts once they are done cooking. So my water is finally boiling, which means that now I can add my spinach into it. So I just take the raw spinach, full leaf form. I did pluck off some of the ends, and I'm going to pop it into this boiling water for just a couple of minutes. It starts to wither pretty quickly once it ends up in the boiling water. I'm putting the top back on just to speed up this process a little bit. And you can see me flipping the bacon. I like it extra crispy. Depends on who you ask in my family, but I like it to have that brown edge, that crisp to it. Okay, so once the spinach is done boiling, you are going to have a bowl of ice water prepared already to the side, and you're going to drain the spinach and then immediately pop it into the ice water bowl, or an ice water bath as it's called, to stop the cooking. This is what blanching spinach means. Now we're going on a little adventure here. Here we go. See, there's my bowl of ice water that I've already created. I'm just using my mixing bowl. And now I'm going to pop the spinach into that to stop the boiling process from happening. Mixing it around will allow the leaves to cool a little bit faster as well. It does only need to stay in here for just a few minutes. This is a fairly quick process, but unless you're using frozen spinach already, which has undergone this process, you do need to blanch your spinach for this recipe. Next clip. Okay, so I've pulled the spinach from the ice water. I have attempted to dry it a bit on paper towels, and now I am shredding it and putting it back in the mixing bowl, which I did clean out, in order to make the stuffing for the chicken breasts, which personally I think is the highlight of this particular recipe. So I'll be combining the spinach, the crumbled bacon that I cooked earlier on, and the shredded cheese. So I'm crumbling the bacon and adding it in. There are definitely more efficient or fancier ways to do this, but that's really not my cooking style. I like to use my hands as much as possible. So crumbling this up, and because it's extra crunchy, it's really easy to do. Also, this would make a delicious salad. So now we're adding the cheese, and as you can see, I really am just eyeballing it, and we've had a little guest sneaker-upper here who likes to sneak onto the counter whenever there's cheese present to see if she can grab a bite. So we need to mix this up, and then this is what goes inside the chicken breasts as they cook. So I'm just using a fork to kind of stir it all together. Callie is being very nosy and watching. There she is. And there's Anna joining us for dinner. So I'll be opening up the chicken breasts. Now, I made a mistake here and I bought really fat, thick chicken breasts. In retrospect, I would have definitely bought smaller or skinnier chicken breasts just because it took way longer than this recipe allotted or said for these to cook. So I'm just washing my hands right now. Chicken is something we cook a lot of, but it is one of my least favorite things to handle just because of the constant sanitizing and hand washing. So my plan is to cut each of these breasts in half, butterflying them, which means I'm not going to cut all the way through. I'm going to kind of cut them so that they are sandwich-like, and that will allow me to stuff them. I've also seasoned these, pre-seasoned them with salt and pepper on the outside. And now I'll be seasoning on the inside as well. I don't go too hard with the salt, but I do hit that pepper quite hard because I like seasoned chicken breasts. We're just, maintaining expectations for our child who doesn't always like things as peppery as we do. I've pulled out one of my baking dishes where I'll be putting the chicken breasts in these to go into the oven, which has already been preheated to 375. So I'm using my hands to take the spinach mixture. Again, you could use a spoon, you could use a ladle, but I find that I have the best control with my hands. And I'm going to kind of put this on the fatter side and then end up closing it like a book before it goes into my dish. So I stuff it as much as I possibly can to try to use all of the ingredients that I've put into my bowl. So here I realized that the baking dish I pulled out may not quite be large enough for the size of these chicken breasts. So I've switched over to using a parchment lined cookie sheet because I think that might give me more space, and it absolutely did. Again, I really underestimated how large these chicken breasts were going to be. So here we go, starting with chicken breast number 2. And I did only end up doing 2 chicken breasts, I believe, because of the size. And I knew that I certainly wasn't going to eat a whole one. Callie was never going to eat a whole one. So this recipe is intended for 4 people. However, you absolutely can get away with doing, if you're using larger chicken breasts, 2 pieces of chicken for 4 people. You could cut them in half, and if you're going to serve them with a side salad, this would be definitely more than enough. I put that 3rd chicken breast off to the side, and we used it later in the week for something else. So now that I realize I'm not using all 3, I'm really jam-packing these with as much of the ingredients as we mixed as possible. Also, if you notice that my apron looks really tiny, it is. This is a children's-sized bell apron that my friend Christy gave to Callie on her birthday with the Disney cookbook, and I thought it would be cute to wear it, but did not realize that it was just going to basically be like a dish towel on my body. It is reversible, super cute, can be found on Amazon, but I wish I had one in an adult size. So now that these are stuffed, we are going to be brushing them with melted butter and sprinkling the outside with seasoned salt, regular salt, whatever you prefer. They are supposed to go into the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. However, these bad boys went into the oven for about 45 minutes before they were actually ready. So we're using 2 tablespoons of butter here. We're going to melt that right in the microwave, and then I will brush this over the tops of the chicken. The butter's melted, and I'm just using a regular spoon to drizzle this over the top. I couldn't find my little butter brush. I did find it later, but I couldn't find it for the purpose of this. However, I think the spoon does the exact same job. The butter is just intended to seal in the flavor and kind of crisp up as the skin on the chicken cooks. These are skinless chicken breasts, and the recipe does call for skin on the top, but we use what we can. I am doing a little bit of fudging around with these recipe details because we didn't use diced pimentos, which you could use as well, and we didn't use white wine because we didn't have any in the house. Hashtag sober for a year. So now we're moving on to the second part of this recipe. Once the chicken breasts are stuffed and in the oven, which could be made so much faster by already having your bacon cooked and not needing to blanch your spinach, we're going to start on what I think is the best part of this recipe, and it's the Florentine sauce. So I'm going to chop up several pre-cut or pre-sliced mushrooms. You really could use whatever flavor mushrooms you prefer. I went with white. I don't think my family loves mushrooms the same way I do, so I didn't want to give them intense mushroomy flavor. But I'm just going to chop these up so that I can saute them in a little bit of butter on the stove. Just giving them kind of a rough chop at the end because they are not supposed to be minced. They are supposed to be chunks. And like Miss Ina Garden says, I like to see what I'm eating. So I don't like tiny minced pieces of things. I want to be able to have that texture while I'm taking a bite. So I do cut them into these rough, really like thicker pieces. And then I do a rough chop at the very end. And I am being super picky about which mushrooms I'm pulling out of there. Just because I can. I have the entire container at my disposal, so I'm trying to be picky about which ones I think look best. Okay, so I'm using the same pan that I cooked the bacon in, and I know it doesn't look very pretty, but I really like that bacony residue at the bottom that you can scrape up once your butter has melted. So I'm dropping in a teaspoon or 2 of butter to let that melt, and I am going to saute my mushrooms in this, and I'm trying to just give it a little wiggle to get that butter started. One of my very favorite kitchen tools is a wooden spoon. So this one was actually gifted to me by my sister-in-law Stephanie a few years ago for Christmas. And as you can see, I am using that butter to kind of scrape up all those delicious brown flecky bits at the bottom. Again, I know it's not pretty, but I promise you it tastes delicious. It gives everything just a little extra kick of flavor. I am now going to turn the heat down a bit and add my mushrooms. Now you could also add here a tablespoon or so of onions as well, and that would be my preference. However, both my husband and my daughter they hate onions. I can sneak them in when they've been sauteed, but in this case, we would only be sauteing them for a little bit, so it wouldn't be quite enough to trick them into that like delicious 25-minute saute situation. So to replace the onions, I am adding a teaspoon of garlic that's already pre-minced from Trader Joe's for flavor, because they won't notice the garlic, but it does add something for me that I really appreciate. So I'm just substituting garlic in this case for an onion. You really don't want, if you're using onions or garlic in this case, you don't want the onions or the garlic to brown. So you do have to pay attention here of your heat. You have to pay attention to how quickly things are cooking. It makes it a little helpful to know how your stovetop operates, if it's even, etc. So this is also where we would be adding 2/3 of a cup of white wine, and I don't have any, which is shocking to the whole world. But because I haven't been drinking since July because of my surgery, I just haven't had white wine in the house because it's too much of a temptation. So in this case, I am going to add a bit of apple cider vinegar, which does the same exact thing. And of course, you would be cooking off any of the alcohol anyway, but I just don't have white wine in the house. Not a great job measuring here or putting you in frame. My apologies. So this is 2/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar, which serves as a substitute for white wine. I am simply pouring that in, and we're going to reduce this. Okay, so now I'm putting all of the remaining ingredients into our simmered down, sauteed mushrooms, garlic, and white wine / apple cider vinegar. So I am going to add the chicken stock here, and I'm pre-measuring that. I'm going to pop my 2 chicken bouillon cubes into that as well. I need to measure out my 1 cup of cream. And chop up the parsley that I'll be using. I also like fresh parsley on the top or fresh herbs on the top of whatever I'm choosing to eat if it's built within the dish as well. Anything that spends, to me, and I'm not a professional chef, but anything that spends 10 to 15 minutes cooking and heating up doesn't have that intensity of flavor that I'm looking for. So I usually take whatever herb I've used to cook with and then a little bit of it to sprinkle on top after the dish is entirely cooked. So I have that top flavor and then the warmed flavor as well within the ingredients. I definitely chopped up too much parsley for this. So I'm just merging these all together before they hit the heat of the pan. And I'll add my chives as well. I do have to say that the refrigerated chives were better than I anticipated. So we're back at the pan here, which has our sauteed mushrooms. We're going to be adding all of the pre-combined ingredients. We still have to add the lemon juice as well. And the goal is to bring all of this to a simmer and add the flour mixture, which makes the roux, a little bit at a time until your sauce is thickened. I didn't end up adding a ton of flour because our chicken needed to cook longer than I thought it would. So I kept most of the sauce. I kept the sauce on low for most of that time, and then it ended up thickening on its own. All right, our last step here, our sauce is ready, and we are finally ready to take our chicken out of the oven and see how it looks. So, okay, this presentation, super messy, but it smelled incredible. And the sauce was definitely the best part. So I was planning to cut these in half and plate them. And there you have it, a magical menu.
Okay, so that is the end of how we made the Blue Bayou Copycat recipe of chicken Florentine. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I really like watching other people cook, and I love like the Food Network. I always have. It inspires me to do something out of my comfort zone. So we have a second video already planned, but if there are things you want us to try to make, whether for legitimate or entertainment purposes, link them or comment below. We're happy to try to make the gray stuff. We're happy to try to make Dole Whips. Like, we will do whatever your Disney loving food heart desires. So comment below what you think we should try to make, or maybe if you want to see Callie try to do some cooking of her own, let us know and we'll do that for you. Until next time, friends, I hope you are having a delicious and magical day. See you in the next video. Bye.